Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we sift through all the noise articles, studies, notes to really pull out the key insights for you.
Basically, yeah, a shortcut to getting your head around big topics without drowning in information.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something huge, something that touches, well, pretty much all of us.
hmm
How is social media actually changing the way our minds work?
hmm We're talking attention, memory, how we think critically, creativity. It's quite a list.
It really is. And look, our goal here isn't doom and gloom or, hype. It's about genuine curiosity.
Right. Let's unpack the studies, look at what's happening out there, and figure out some practical things you can take away.
Okay, so let's dive in.
Well, it's pretty amazing how fast our brains have sort of adapted. You know that feeling, that little ping from your phone?
Oh, yeah, that notification
It's
sound.
more than just a sound, right?
Yeah.
It's like this powerful trigger, neurologically speaking. It's been, well, actively rewiring us.
Actively rewiring. So what does that actually mean for like our day-to-day ability to focus? Is it subtle or are we talking something bigger?
It's pretty fundamental. It's a huge challenge to our attention. I mean, think
Really?
about this. Some studies suggest our average attention span has just plummeted.
Plummeted how?
Well, back in, say, 2004, it was maybe around 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Now, some figures put it at under 50 seconds, maybe 47 seconds.
Less than a minute.
Yeah. And it seems directly linked to, constantly switching tasks online, that digital overload.
Right, the multitasking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why you see experts, like from Ohio State University, suggesting things like the Take 5 method.
Take 5, what's that?
Just taking like 5 or 10 minute breaks from tech every hour, just to ease that cognitive fatigue.
That makes a lot of sense. You really feel that drain sometimes. And this ties into that bigger idea, doesn't it? Neuroscientists talk about continuous partial attention.
They do. And the cost of always being split, never fully focused on one thing, it's significant. Well, for starters, it eats away at your working memory. It makes creative thinking harder. And it can actually mess with your decision making.
So it's like our brains are constantly running background processes.
Kind of, yeah, a constant cognitive drain, never really switching off.
And then you add in the explosion of short videos, TikTok, Reels, all that.
Right. And there's a study, CHI 23, I think, that found watching those super fast videos actually hurt something called prospective memory.
Perspective memory. That's like remembering to do things later.
Exactly. Your ability to act on future intentions. And other studies with young people in Jordan link addiction to these short videos with weaker attention and memory, too. Specifically, weakening executive control.
So our minds get trained to want that quick hit, that fragmented information.
Yeah, we adapt to crave it. But the downside is losing that deep focus, that ability to plan ahead.
It's not just that attention spans are shorter.
No, the really key thing is that this constant need for bits and pieces seems to actually erode the brain pathways we need for sustained deep thinking. It's a fundamental shift in processing.
Okay, so attention is scattered. What about actually holding on to information? Memory.
Well, that brings us to this idea of digital amnesia.
Digital amnesia.
Yeah, basically we lean so heavily on our phones as like external memory banks.
Like an outboard brain.
Exactly. Phone numbers, facts, reminders. We
Yeah.
offload it all. So we don't encode it as deeply ourselves. And then, naturally, we don't recall it as well.
So convenience costs us actual memory function.
It's a direct trade-off, yeah. And you see it in everyday life.
Yeah.
There was research, BMC Psychiatry, I believe, linking higher social media use with more everyday cognitive failures.
Failures.
Forgetting appointments, losing your train of thought mid-sentence, just feeling generally a bit foggy.
I have definitely had more "why did I come into this room" moments lately. It's unnerving to think it might be more than just, getting older.
Right. And you hear that term brain rot floating around now.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Health.com flagged it as a real concern. A side effect of just scrolling through endless, shallow stuff. It degrades memory, focus, critical thinking.
So it's not just a catchy phrase. It points to something real about the quality of what we're feeding our minds.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And you even have outlets like the Financial Times talking about a potential recession of the human mind.
Wow, that's quite a phrase. A recession of the mind.
Yeah, the idea being that all these digital distractions are just overwhelming our mental resilience, our ability to think analytically. It's a stark metaphor.
It really is. But it can't be all bad, surely.
No, definitely not. And that's crucial. Thoughtful, intentional use of tech can actually be great for memory.
How so?
Well, things like digital journaling or consciously creating content instead of just consuming. Time.com pointed this out. It deepens your engagement, forces intentional recall.
So the tool itself isn't inherently bad.
Exactly. It's all about how you use it.
That's a really important point. Okay, so attention and memory are being reshaped. What about our ability to actually think about the information we're seeing? Critical thinking.
Yeah, this is another big area. A key issue is algorithmic bias.
Meaning the platforms show us what they think we want to see?
Precisely. They prioritize content that matches what we already believe, which leads straight to confirmation bias.
And that narrows our perspective.
Hugely. Limits exposure to different views, reinforces polarization. You end up in these digital echo chambers.
Where everyone just agrees with you.
Right. And when you're only hearing agreement, your ability to handle nuance, to weigh different sides, even just to pause and question something, it starts to atrophy. You get less practice.
And there are actual cognitive effects, right? Like the misinformation effect.
Yes, that's a big one. Exposure to fake or misleading stuff can literally change your memory of events, even things you saw yourself.
That's quite scary.
It is. And then there's the Google effect, this idea that because we know information is searchable,
We don't bother learning it deeply.
pretty much, it leads to shallower retention. Why memorize it if it's always just a click away?
And what about the format of the content itself? Does that matter?
It seems to. Some research, like from archive.org, suggests that moderate length content, maybe like a typical Facebook post, can actually spark critical thinking.
Okay, but not other lengths.
Apparently stuff that's really long or really short and bite-sized often doesn't trigger that same critical engagement. Seems there's a kind of sweet spot.
Interesting. So boiling it down, social media often prioritizes speed and distraction.
Over depth and reflection, yeah. And that really challenges our ability to think thoughtfully and independently.
And beyond just how we think, there's the mental load, right? The sheer volume, especially of misinformation.
Absolutely. False stuff spreads like wildfire online,
Yeah.
often because it's designed to provoke an emotional reaction, grab attention.
And seeing all that has consequences.
Definitely. Studies link exposure to misinformation with higher stress, anxiety, even feelings of paranoia.
And it's not just the fake news, it's just the amount of everything.
Exactly. Information overload. Our cognitive systems just get swamped. We can't process it all deeply.
And we just skim.
We skim. And studies show that when we're overloaded, we actually need to see new ideas multiple times just to internalize them. Our brains are too full to absorb things on the first pass.
Okay, so let's piece this together. You've got echo chambers, your attention is fragmented, there's misinformation flying around, and just way too much clutter.
The cumulative effect, cognitive exhaustion, basically. Our minds end up drained, more reactive, less reflective.
Wow. Okay, that paints a pretty concerning picture. But as you said, it's not all bad. Where's the upside? How can social media actually be, well, good for our brains?
Right, the flip side. And there definitely is one. Review in Frontiers in Cognition really stressed this duality risks and rewards.
Okay.
The key takeaway was that intentional use can lead to positive cognitive effects, better decision-making, enhanced learning, across all ages, actually. It's about purpose.
Being purposeful, not passive. I like that. And you mentioned earlier that some formats can trigger critical thinking.
Yeah, those online studies found storytelling formats, particularly in the just right length, could do it. And think about education-guided use of platforms can be great for research, debate, building digital literacy, if it's done thoughtfully.
With the right teaching approach.
Exactly. And even in the workplace, moderated social channels within a company can spark creativity, team innovation.
And just connecting with people, finding niche groups.
Huge benefits there, too. Makership, peer support, connecting with global cultures, things that were much harder before. That access is incredibly powerful.
And what about teens? We hear so much about the downsides for them.
We do, and we'll get to the concerns, but POW research found that almost 3/4 of teenagers say social media actually strengthens their friendships.
74%, that's high.
It is. And 63% said it sparks their creativity. So the real insight here isn't just good or bad.
It's more complex.
It's an amplifier.
Okay.
It boosts whatever you put into it. The power isn't in avoiding it, but in learning how to use it well. It demands really a new kind of digital literacy.
That's a great way to put it, an amplifier. Okay, so acknowledging those positives, let's pivot to those concerns, especially for younger people whose brains are still developing under all this digital pressure. How vulnerable are they?
Well, some of the stats are, frankly, quite stark. There was one study, over 4,000 kids aged 9-10.
Okay.
It found that addictive digital use, not just time spent, but the pattern of use, was linked to 2 to 3 times higher rates of suicidal thoughts.
Wow. That's incredibly serious.
It is. And the World Health Organization reported back in 2022 that around 11% of adolescents show signs of problematic social media use.
What does problematic mean here?
Things like addiction-like behaviors, serious sleep disruption, neglecting school or friends. And it seemed to hit girls particularly hard.
And experts are seeing this play out.
Yeah, psychiatrists like Anna Lemke at Stanford talk about how these device-heavy environments seem to contribute to ADHD-like symptoms.
It's inability to focus.
That, but also weaker emotional skills, poor impulse control, attention issues,
Yeah.
fundamental developmental stuff.
And we're seeing schools react now, aren't we? With phone bans.
Yes, and with some interesting results reported in the Times, UK schools that banned or locked phones away during the day saw real improvements.
Like what?
Better concentration in class, kids reporting better memory, sleeping more, and even getting higher exam scores, like 1 or 2 grades higher on average in GCSEs.
That's a massive difference. Tangible benefits.
It really is. But here's the interesting twist. The teenagers themselves don't always see it that way.
How do you mean?
Well, research from scrp.org found that while nearly half of teens feel they spend too much time online,
45%. Okay.
only about 14% think it's actually harming their own mental health,
Ah.
even though they often see the downsides in their friends.
So there's a disconnect, a kind of personal blind spot.
Seems like it, which is probably why most experts don't advocate for outright bans across the board.
Right. So what's the recommendation then?
It's more about mindful guidance, focusing on media literacy, teaching healthy habits, fostering empathy online, equipping them rather than just restricting them.
Empowering them to navigate it.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground, the challenges, the potential benefits, the specific risks for young people. Where does this leave us? It can feel a bit overwhelming.
It can, but here's the hopeful part, the really empowering message.
Yeah.
We can take back control. We're not just passive victims here. We can sharpen our thinking, enrich our mental lives.
All right, I'm listening. What can people actually do? Give us the practical steps.
Okay, first up, set intentional boundaries.
Yeah.
Seriously, use those screen time limits on your phone. Create tech-free zones or times at home.
Like no phones at the dinner table.
Exactly, and try that Take 5 thing we mentioned, those short breaks, to give your brain a chance to refocus.
Okay, boundaries. What else?
Second, engage. Don't just consume. Shift from mindless scrolling to being more active. Create something. Write a thoughtful comment. Ask questions. Use your feeds deliberately to learn or connect or reflect, not just to, numb out.
Be intentional about why you're opening the app.
Precisely. Third, seek out diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Actively look for and follow people or sources with different perspectives than your own.
Break the filter bubble.
Yes, make a conscious effort. It takes work, but it's crucial for critical thinking.
Okay. Number 4.
Fourth, and this is a big one, fact check before you share. Just pause, verify the source. Try to trace the claim.
Ask yourself, do I actually know this is true?
Right. And maybe, why am I sharing this if I can't back it up? It's about responsibility.
Got it. What's next?
Fifth, schedule actual digital detoxes. Put the phone away. Go for a walk outside, read a physical book, talk to someone face to face.
Things that don't involve a screen.
Exactly. Offline time isn't just nice. It actively rebuilds mental resilience and helps your memory. It helps recalibrate your brain.
Okay, that makes sense. One more.
And finally, especially if you have kids or influence younger people, teach smart digital habits. Model critical thinking about tech yourself.
Lead by example.
Yeah. Build their media literacy skills. Talk about empathy and being responsible online. It really does start with us.
How boundaries, engagement, diversity, checking facts, detoxing, and teaching the next generation.
If you approach it with intention, with clear priorities and just basic awareness, social media can be a tool.
Not a trap.
Exactly.
Right. So we've really journeyed through a lot today, haven't we?
We have, from how social media can fracture our attention and make memory feel a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, to the real risks around critical thinking, how misinformation spreads, and those specific worries about young people's mental health.
But also remembering the other side, its potential to spark creativity, build connections, be a powerful learning tool.
So the invitation, the challenge for you listening, is really to think about how you use these platforms, intentionally, not just mindlessly.
Yeah, anchoring ourselves in curiosity, aiming for depth, showing empathy, making space for reflection.
So thinking about all that, about reclaiming our minds, Here's a final thought to maybe chew on this week. What's one specific practical boundary or maybe one intentional digital habit that you could commit to trying? Just one thing this week to cultivate a bit more focus or maybe richer connections?
Good question to ponder.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and always, always aim to enrich minds and spark curiosity.
Until next time.
Stay thoughtful, stay curious, and take good care of your mind.